And welcome back to the series of videos talking about HarnMaster system in Foundry Virtual Tabletop. I've been doing a number of videos showing you how you can use the HarnMaster system, and the most recent release that is only on version 0.8 of Foundry has added fantastic support for macros, and you're able to really take the automation kind of to the next step and able to do some really cool things with this. This is going to be a longer video. I may end up splitting it into two parts, but I want to go here in depth into how you do macro programming with the HarnMaster system. Now you'll notice that the screen looks a little bit different than what it usually does. What I've got open over here, so here is the normal Foundry Virtual Tabletop that you're used to seeing, but over here is actually the debugger window. I've got the console open. The console will be your friend when you are doing macros. You can do a lot of console logging, and you can see exceptions and get an idea of what went wrong with your macro, because things will go wrong with the macro. But it'll give you an idea of what went wrong, and I'm going to take you through some examples of you know, what goes wrong, how you can troubleshoot that. This is why it's going to be a long video. All right, so let's start first with how to open the console. In Chrome, you just press F12. I think it's the same in Firefox, not sure. I mostly use Chrome for this kind of stuff. And it has various tabs. If you happen to get off of the main console tab and you're in an area that you don't really recognize, it's right here. You just press console, that'll get you back. This is showing you HTML, and you can see it moves things around. Console is where you generally want to be. There are opportunities for you to get into other areas, and I just wanted to point out this is how you get back. All right, let's start next with the documentation that is out there for macros. So on the URL or on the wiki for HarnMaster, the HarnMaster 3 system over on GitHub, there's a wiki. It's got a couple pages in here which is using macros and example macros. I'll post the links in the description for this video. This is what you want to have as kind of a reference. It tells you what's available for you. I'll be showing you how to find out what's available as well, in case you don't happen to have this page open. And then over here is example macros. This is a page that I'm writing, and I'm putting in here little snippets or full-on complete macros that you can use for improving the game, or you can start with it in order to improve the game experience for you. So over here, this is the using macros. This other tab is the example macros. I'll be posting both these links in the in the description. So looking here at the example macros, the first one is basic logging. Console, I already talked about the console. If you want to log something to the console, get your own output, you just type console.log. This tutorial is going to assume that you are kind of familiar with JavaScript. Anything that you're not familiar with JavaScript, generally it's a quick Google away, and it's reasonably straightforward. These are statements. They're going to be executed in order. Over here in the HarnMaster, what I've done is, if we open the actor for my mage here and look at the esoterics, the support that they've added in here is to have macros on items. This is super powerful. I use it mostly for spellcasters. You can actually put the macro on pretty much anything. So each item here has a macro. This is my log to console spell, which is just going to, as you saw over from the other place, I just took that code and I'm doing a log of actor, log of token. These are the variables that are available to you when you're messing around. So let's go ahead and cast this spell. you see over here that stuff has popped up, and we've got a marginal failure in this particular case, but in actuality we succeeded at logging to the console, which was the point of the spell. So what we have here is the results of the console log. Here is the HarnMaster actor. Let's pull this up. Okay, so the first statement is log actor. Here's our HarnMaster actor. This is where it gets really cool. You can actually expand this little chevron and you can see all of the attributes that are available to you. So if you wanted to, instead of having HarnMaster actor, if you wanted to look at, say, what the items are, okay, here's a map of 47 items. So you could just do a log actor dot items, and that would, instead of logging the actor, it would log the items here. And so this is how you're accessing the attributes. It's dot notation. You start with the you start with the primary variable, the primary actor, and then you do a dot for each of the variable, for each of the attributes that you want to go into. Similarly, token. So you need to be familiar with the difference between a token and an actor. Actors are off of the actor area here. Tokens, you get them by double clicking. It's the same thing that you get here. The difference between Halea, which I got from double clicking here, or Halea, which I get from double clicking here. You'll see it says prototype token versus token. So you need to be familiar with the difference between the token. You can actually have multiple tokens for the same actor on the screen at once. That's how you do mobs of Gargan. Okay, so you need to be familiar with when you'd want to use token, when you'd want to use actor. What else do we have? We've got the, let's go back into here. What are we logging? We're logging the speaker, which is referenced apparently via the scene. You only really use speaker as an argument to the dialogues. That way, when you create a dialogue programmatically, it will have the speaker right here. So speaker is just a parameter that you take in and you pass it on to the chat dialogue. We'll go over that later. HarnMaster item. This is the spell in this case. This is the item that has the macro that's being invoked. In this particular case, it is a spell. And we can see this here under HarnMaster item, and we look under data, and we're going to look under data again. And there you can see that there's a level for the spell. There's the macro. This is the same macro. You've got the notes, you've got the skill base available, you've got the skill index available, and the effective mastery level. So these are all things that you can be using in your macro for determining what you want to, how you want to do things. So in this particular case, it would be item.data.data.level. So we could do an item.data.data.level. This right here is going to give you the level of the spell. Okay, I'll reference that later on when we're talking about how to auto increase fatigue. All right. And then we've got the roll result. This is the other one that you're going to be very interested in. The roll result is here. It has a description, which is the marginal failure. It's got the critical. It's not a critical, so you can find out if it's a critical and if it's a success. And so if this is, true, false, false, true, whatever you've got. Okay. You also have the result in text format. That can be handy as well. You've got what you rolled, which was a 71. This is your target. This is the modified target. So if you've got the modifier on there, in this case it was 60, modifier of 0. And a title. So there we go. The type is spell log to console. So there's the stuff that that's interesting for that. And then the last one is character. Character is something that is, again, it's taken in as a parameter and it's passed along to certain things at certain times. I generally don't use it. It is available for item macros. And so here, if we look at the using macros wiki, so this is this one here, and it shows you the item macros. These are the variables that are available to you. So character, usually it's null. I don't know why. I generally don't use it. The ones that I'm using are actor, token, and item, role result. These are all the really big ones. Sometimes if I'm making a dialogue, I'll use the speaker. Never use the character. That's me. I haven't found a need for it yet. All right. So that's the log to console. Let's take a little bit more interesting one. This hocus pocus spell. That's actually not interesting. Okay. But it is interesting in one particular aspect. Okay. So you'll notice that there's no macro on it. And if I cast it, boom, you'll see that we do the casting of hocus pocus, marginal success, and we've got this extra text here. Mage fine-tunes the form causing fatigue. This is new. You don't have this in your system. Where did this come from? Let's talk a little bit about hooks. So there's two ways that you can specify a macro for an action. So we've already seen log to console. So we have it associated directly with log to console. And this only executes when I do log to console. There's also this concept of hooks. Going back to the using macros, these are post-roll hooks. And these are called unconditionally, regardless of what actor it is. And as you can see, with the hocus pocus spell, even if there's no macro associated with it, it's just always called. And we've got a lot of hooks that are available for customization. The one that I was using, and I'm going to show it to you next, is the HM3 on spell roll. So anytime when you define a hook, anytime that any actor casts a spell, regardless of the spell, it's going to call this on spell roll hook. And it does include the item. So let's take a look at what that looks like. If you haven't seen it before, if you haven't been messing around with macros, it's down here. It's this little folder icon next to the hotbar. Not a super obvious place to be putting this. I really think it should be up here, but anyhow. You click on this and you get a list. Now, if you've got a vanilla system, then this is going to be a long list of just a bunch of macros. I've installed the add-on, the module called Macro Folders, which allows me to organize macros into folders. And so I've got a folder now for HM3 hooks. I expand it, and you'll notice that I've got a lot of different hooks, and the macro name needs to be named the same as the hook. So let's look at the on spell roll. You just click on it here, okay, and we're going to have the spell roll macro. Now this is a lot of text, all right? So I'm going to break this down, okay? And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it from the example macros just because the text is larger, okay? So this on spell roll, this is the exact same code that's over on the macro, but it is broken down a little bit more, and it's also color coded, so it's the exact same code. Okay, so let fatigue equals 0. Oh, and it actually has an extra colon there. I need to remove that. Okay, so let fatigue equals 0. This is just starting it out. This is how much fatigue by default we're going to be changing. And the result, this is just text that's going to be output in the dialog. So it's initialized to an empty string. I'm doing a switch statement. Switch statement, if you're not familiar with it, Google it to understand it better. Quick overview is it's going to look at this data, which is the roll result, and depending on what's in there, it's going to do one of several different cases. And you always want to, after you do a case, you want to do a break. That's just the syntax. Common error is you forget the break, and then it does first this and then this, and things don't work the way you want. All right, so case of critical success, we're going to set the fatigue to 0, and we're going to say Mage creates a perfect form that costs no fatigue. These are the rules as written out of HarnMaster Magic. Marginal success, we're going to have fatigue set to +1, so we're going to be increasing the fatigue. And the text around this is the Mage fine-tunes the form. If it's a marginal failure, critical failure, you're either going to be adding 1 or 2. And it has a little bit of description here around it. All right. And then default is unknown roll result. So this is why this particular error, I haven't noticed it before, because regardless of what's here, I'm in every single case overwriting fatigue. So unknown roll result, this is a little JavaScript syntax. It allows you to substitute in variables inside of a string, kind of handy. All right, so this is all boring stuff, but it's basically the rules. It's the marginal success adds 1, critical failure adds 2. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. Okay, so now we're in our macro. We're going to be calling another macro. We're going to be calling a macro that is part of the HM3 game system, which is change fatigue, which takes 2 arguments, the fatigue string, so +1, +2, or 0, and the actor. Okay, and so this is actually going to be doing the changing of the fatigue. And lastly, we create a little chat message where we do chat message create, user, this is the user, here's where we're passing through speaker. We haven't used it before, we're only using it in the chat message create. And then the content is this, this code. This can be full HTML, so if you want to do bold, if you want to do italic, anything like that, you can put full HTML in there, and that's going to pop up like this. Chat message is part of the Foundry core. So go ahead and you can Google FoundryVTT chat message, and it'll bring you to, actually let's just go ahead and do that. FoundryVTT chat message should take you to the API, and it'll tell you all the different things you can do. All right. So this is the on spell roll. So this is going to be invoked every single time that any actor anywhere casts a spell. So this way we've got the logic all set up for how to deal with how to deal with fatigue. So let's take a look. Let's modify this real quick. So let's get rid of that extra colon, and we're going to say the default is spell level is 1, so no fatigue. Okay, I'd probably word it better. And then I'll just take this whole thing and I'll put it inside of an if item dot data dot level. So remember I was calling that out earlier that we might want to use this, is greater than 1. So what I'm doing is a little house rule. Spell level 1 doesn't ever cost fatigue. All right, and there we go. Close that, save it, and now if I call Hocus Pocus, this is a first level spell. Spell level is 1, so no fatigue. There we go. We've got it all set up. All right, let's introduce a quick error so that you can see how to deal with errors. Here we are on spell roll. All right, and we're going to put in here, let's just do that. Okay, complete garbage. Save the macro. We're going to call hocus pocus. Boom. We have an error. This is not defined. And so now you know that there's a problem with that. Somewhere we've got this weird stuff. And you see here that we've got hyperlinks. Utility.js, utility.js, macros.js. These are all things that come with the HarnMaster system. If you click on it, it's going to take you into the code. This is not where your problem is. And that's kind of why I wanted to go into this, how to do a little bit of troubleshooting. All right. So here, what you've got is console error. Well, that's not the problem. That's just reporting the problem. And this is where I wanted to point out that in order to get back to your console, you click on this again. All right. So, how to do a little bit of troubleshooting? Well, this is where the console log is going to be helpful. Let's go back to the on spell roll. We're trying to figure stuff out. All right. One of the things that you want to do generally is do a console.log in macro hm3.on spell roll. So leave yourself some clues in the console of where you're at, because this stack trace isn't going to help when the problem is inside of your macro. Okay. So now if we do this and we do the hocus pocus, boom, we can see here we've got in macro hm3 on spell roll. And now we know where to go in and go looking for the problem. And we go in here and we look and we say, oh, the cat type walked across the keyboard. It's got this LJAS. You basically start looking for things that are in the error message inside of your macro. It'll oftentimes be something like, if you misspell actor, then it's going to say, the misspelled actor is not defined. So you just want to look for that kind of stuff. And if you're getting really complicated and having macros calling other macros, then you can additionally do things like at the last line, do a console.log leaving hm3.on spell roll. But in general, if you're getting this deep and this complex into your macros, you might want to consider opening a pull request instead, or a feature request to the system instead. I don't know. I think that you're going to be, if you're going too deep, it may be a little bit of an issue. You can actually have one macro call another macro, and I've got code on how to do that, and that is right up here. Before I discovered the, let's look at the example macros. Before I discovered the hooks, this is how I was doing spell fatigue. Every single spell had this little snippet of logic repeated in it, and so that macro was calling a predefined spell fatigue macro. Now that I've got the hook, that's a much better way to do it, and so I've switched over to doing hooks. All right. I'm going to wrap up here for this video. Next video is going to be looking at some really cool complex spells where we're putting effects on targeted actors. I'll show you the how to have combatants marked as defeated when they fail their shock roll. Lots of fun. Stay tuned. Oh, hit like and subscribe, and you'll get notified of the new video when it comes out.